Okay, last time we talked about what ChatGPT had to say about 12 tips for running a business successfully with your spouse. Today, we're going to talk about 12 lessons that we have personally learned in 12 years of full-time entrepreneurship.
That's right. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. This is the Gen 224 Marriage Podcast, episode number 28. We are Larry and Sue. We are your hosts. And we just love talking about marriage, and we love talking about entrepreneurship. And so we combine these together a lot. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. And I think it was kind of fun to look at the suggestions that ChatGPT had. So if you haven't heard that episode, you'll maybe want to go back and listen to that one first. And then, because we're probably going to be making some comparisons as we go here today.
Yeah.
And there goes our printer making that noise. So sorry about that.
We didn't wait long enough to start recording.
So our list here then.
Yeah.
These are 12 things that we have learned, which are kind of 12 tips for married couples working together. And I think most of these would be kind of universal for any entrepreneur, but there's a special twist on it for married couples working together, since that's what we know, and that's who we are.
I said it was lessons learned. It's really kind of 12 rules that we've come up with.
Okay, yeah.
Because we've learned some lessons. So it's going to all be combined. So
that's right.
Lessons, rules, you take your pick. All right.
And then see if you like ours more than Chat's. I
hope we get a better grade than Chat did.
I hope we should. We gave him like a B+, so.
Yeah, we got some work cut out
we get
for us.
an A.
Yeah. All right. Rule number 12. Nothing.
We're going to go backwards.
We are.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. That's
Chat. We went from 1 to 12. Now we're going 12 to 1.
Yes.
So this is like
backwards.
It's like
it's a countdown.
It's a countdown. That's what it is.
To launching.
Go ahead.
All right. Rule number 12. Nothing is easy.
That has been our experience, right?
Very much.
And I think this kind of speaks to expectations, right?
Yes.
There's so many ads out there and social media and online that's like how you can make millions of dollars overnight almost is almost
with this one simple tip.
One simple secret.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That so and so learned. And I'd say we've fallen for that before.
A couple times. We don't like to talk about those.
No, but it's out there. And
yeah,
I would say that probably most entrepreneurs have succumbed to that at some stage. But the reality is it's just not easy.
Which means it's worth it.
Yeah. Yes. That was so emphatic. You were so excited about that. Yes, it is worth it.
Yeah.
I suppose if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
And then
the fruit from doing hard things is sweet.
Yes.
It is so good.
Yeah. So we actually want things to some extent to be difficult.
Absolutely.
Because it does eliminate competition. I don't know. I like to bring this up a lot that we're on episode 28 now.
Yeah.
And that we've just recently heard that most people don't even make it to episode number 10 because it looks easy. It sounds easy. It seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun for us. But so many people get started and just realize that, okay, this is more effort than I realized. Everybody said this was going to be easy. And so then they just quit their podcast early on. And in some ways, again, from our standpoint, we're going to stand out a little bit because we're going to continue on. We have continued on, and we're going to continue on with this, even doing a couple of episodes per week, which even a lot of the big podcasters only do one a week. So we're just working. We may go down to one a week at some point, or we may change that. But
and this goes right into rule number 11.
Okay, yeah. So number 11 then is to serve. And that may seem like, okay, what's that have to do with anything? But that has really become a super important aspect of what we have learned really over the last year.
Absolutely. And you need to serve when it's easy. You need to serve when it's difficult. You need to serve in good times. You need to serve in bad times. And we've alluded to this in a few other arenas, but when you are serving from a place of not where you just feel the best and are doing the best and everything is hunky-dory in your life.
Yeah.
When you serve in spite of obstacles that you run into, that is something that it's rewarding for you. I think the Lord blesses it and uses it in the lives of the people that you're serving and brings amazing fruit from that.
Yeah.
So serving when it's hard and when it's easy is super important.
And I do think one of the just an idea or a thought on this is to serve on something where you're in a normal routine or rotation with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, we are youth group leaders at our church. And so that's every single Wednesday night, whether we had a good day or a bad day, whether we had a good week or whether we had a bad week that day or a bad month that week. We go and we show up and we build into the lives of those young children, not children, young kids, young adults, young people. How should I say that?
The youth.
The youth. Yeah. They wouldn't want me to call them kids because they're teenagers. But then we come away encouraged and blessed and challenged many times by doing that. So that's number 11 is to serve no matter what.
Absolutely. And rule number 10 is look at your differences as a positive, not a negative.
Okay. So this one is very specific to a husband and wife now. And again, this could be any married couple, but definitely married couples who work together. I would say that maybe early on that we would say some of those differences we didn't see them as positives, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that I wish we would have been taught really before we even got married and definitely early on in our marriage. So we teach this a lot now that we are different and we want to be different. Just men and women think differently to start. Mm-hmm. And then when you add in different personalities and you add in different experiences and backgrounds and all of that, we just see life differently. But like, I don't want a clone of myself. Mm-hmm. And I don't want somebody who just agrees with me all the time and just, tells me everything that I think is right. That would be horrible for me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I need somebody to disagree with me.
Yes, absolutely.
And so those can be real positives then, and we can utilize each other's strengths for sure.
Absolutely. You want to go to the next one?
Wow, you're not going to comment on that one?
On that one? I'm trying to follow the notes.
I'm not. Where was my notes? All right. So rule number 9 then is slow and steady.
Absolutely. And that is super important for you as you build your business. Don't be in a hurry. When you get in a hurry, you make poor decisions. You oftentimes make mistakes when you're in a hurry. Let's see, you can bulldoze over each other, steamroll each other if you're in a hurry and your spouse isn't. But that controlled, steady growth is more sustainable. Now, I don't mean that it just has to be steadily all in a straight line, because we know that success looks more like a roller coaster than it does a straight line. But being constantly moving towards the goal together is what you want to be doing. And it's not a race. There's no imposed deadline that you need to put on yourself. We need to be, at this spot by a certain time. It's good to have goals, but if you don't make it, if you're in a hurry about, setting goals that are too big and you got to get there too fast, you may end up not reaching any goals.
And I think this is where, again, social media, there's some benefits, there's some good to it, but there's a lot of downsides to it. And I think sometimes when we see or hear like all these overnight success stories, right? That can be poisonous to us at times if we just say like, oh, that person, maybe even you say like that person is a wicked, ungodly person and they just have all this success. And that can create that bitterness in you. So don't fall into that trap and just stay on your slow and steady pace. And because you don't want to, what is it? Comparison is
it's the thief of joy.
Thief of joy.
And you want to compare apples to apples. This is something that this kind of applies more to personal life, but I can remember as a young wife and mother of five 5 kids is not neat and tidy all the time. Okay. And so we always had a room, in the back of the house, whatever, the playroom, whatever, the non-public spaces they were messy all the time. And we would go maybe to dinner at a friend's house, and we were in their living room and their dining room, which they probably spent some time cleaning up and getting ready for company. And I would go there and see that part of her house, the woman's house. And I would think, oh, she's such a better housekeeper than me, because I'm picturing my back room that is full of toys and out of season clothes and totes and, all the things. And that's not comparing apples to apples. That's apples to oranges. And so
I remember a time where we went to somebody's house and their house was perfect.
Oh,
it was spotless. And there was a group of us there and everything like that. And the husband walked over to a drawer in the dining room. I think it was. There was
I remember this.
He went and he started pulling up that drawer, and the wife went, "Don't open that drawer." And he's just like, "Why?" And apparently that drawer was a mess.
Yeah.
Apparently she had shoved everything into.
Oh, so funny.
We would not have thought any less of her or them or their house or anything had we seen all the junk in that drawer, but she was mortified.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an example of what you're
saying. Exactly. All right. Rule number 8 is be part of a community. That is super important.
This is a big one we've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll just go all the way back to whenever we first started this. Because of my experiences in the business world and just, all the nonsense that goes on. If you've had a job out there, exactly what I'm talking about, just the politics and the drama and just all that type of stuff. We started an online business, and I was bound and determined to sit at this computer all day and not see anybody other than my family. Mm-hmm. And I was, I don't know. I was wrong. I was wrong about that.
You didn't want to work with people anymore.
I did not want to work with people. I did not want to see people. I didn't want to think about people. But I realized it was pretty early on. I realized this is a mistake. We are not made for isolation. That is actually a really dangerous thing for us to isolate too much. Even as a family, and just say our family is this little protected area, and we're not going to interact with other families or other people. That is not a good thing. So we learned very quickly that we needed to be a part of a community, and praise the Lord, we found some really amazing communities, both online, and then we've got together many, many times with these people in person, and in person is always best. So, you want to be part of your church and your, anything in your community you can be a part of. Mm-hmm. But, even if your business is online, make sure you're part of an online community.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Number 7 then is to grant each other veto power.
Oh,
again, husband and wife.
This has been so powerful for us, because what we mean by that is basically that when you are making big decisions together, if you each have veto power, if each one of you has the power to put on the brakes on a big decision, then you can go into decisions much more confidently. And we have done that before. And sometimes it has been, I'm not comfortable doing this yet. Right. And so we've let it sit for a little while. And then later we came back and did it. Mm-hmm. And a couple times the person who was vetoing never did get comfortable with it, and we just didn't do that one. And so I think that is super powerful, because it doesn't make anybody in the business partnership and relationship, which is your marriage, you never feel like you're the victim or that you've been steamrolled into doing something that you really thought was a bad idea or you really did not want to do. And so granting each other that veto power and using it wisely. Yeah. It should never become a weapon. You don't use it as a weapon. Like, I'm upset with you about something you said at dinner last night personally, and so I'm going to say no to your want to today. Yeah. Don't do that with it, because that breaks trust. Yeah. But having that power to be able to say, not right now. I don't think we should do that right now is really, it's empowering, and it's very helpful to making you feel secure in your business and in your marriage relationship.
So it should be used very rarely.
Yes. Yes.
And then as the member of the marriage who got vetoed.
Yeah.
Your vote got vetoed. Again, you just have to be patient with that.
Mhm.
There are times where, like, everybody tries to put pressure on you. You got to make the decision right now, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And there are times where that veto will cause you to miss that opportunity.
Mhm.
But in our experience, a very similar opportunity will almost always come around again very soon.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of tough sometimes when you've been vetoed, but you
Yeah.
have to just, and we've used it, a couple times.
Oh, it hasn't
I
been
mean,
very often at all.
in 12 years, maybe
Yeah.
twice, something like that.
Mhm.
So this is a very rare thing, but it is empowering and it's helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know that you're not going to be dragged into something that you don't want to do. Okay. Rule number 6 is use what is in your hand.
And this comes from the scripture, and we've talked about this on the podcast here, where God asked Moses, "What is that you have in your hand?" And Moses had a simple shepherd's staff, but that was what God had him use to perform many miracles. And God performed the miracles through Moses. And so, just the concept or the idea behind that, though, is that we all have things in our hands, and when we look at them, they seem really simple, and they seem very humbling and not important, and not really something that we can do much with. But God says, yes, you can use those. I've given those to you for a purpose. And so these can be skills and abilities and knowledge, things that that other people ask you about. This can be even your family situation. If you've got children, we had all of our kids get involved in the business, and they learned a lot, and they were helpful, and they were cheap labor.
Yeah. Especially when they were real little.
Yes.
They were happy.
Yes. I remember having the kids like shred documents or such, things for me, just papers that we didn't need anymore. And I would pay them like a quarter for a plastic bag.
Yeah.
Like they had to do a lot of work for that quarter, but
Yeah.
But that was helpful. So use what you have in your hand, and you kind of have to take an inventory before you can do that. So it's a good exercise for husband and wife together. And sometimes for you to think about, what do I have, skills and talents and abilities wise, experiences, things like that, and then have your spouse do that, and then for you to rate each other on those type of things, or not rate, but list out those things, because sometimes you can't see it yourself. Your spouse says, "Hey, you're really good at such and such," and you're like, "Yeah, I kind of am."
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely you want to use what you have available to you, what you have in your hand right now.
Absolutely. All right.
So then number 5 is to always dream together.
Absolutely. We've talked about this so much. I hope that you already do that. I hope that you're already making efforts to have dreams that you dream together. But part of that is getting on the same page. You're going to have to discuss it for that to happen. But part of that is knowing that you are both working towards the same dream, whatever that dream is. And having the same dream means you're rowing the same direction. It means that you're headed the same way. It means that you know the next steps that you're going to be taking. So having that same dream, you want to have the same overall goal for the business. You want to have, where are you taking the business? What do you want to do with it? Who do you want to serve? Those types of things. Knowing that you are on the same page makes it happen so much better. Now, what do you do if you're not on the same page? If you haven't been able to reconcile your dreams together? Well, we would suggest that you put a pause on things and talk that through until you do get on the same page and you can reconcile your dreams together. It could be your dreams aren't as different as what you first think they are, or it could be that, one's wanting to go this direction and one's wanting to go that direction with their dreams. And, getting to a point where you have the same dream, whether one of you goes over to the other one's dream and you just get fully on board with that, or you both come up with something new that you want to go towards. I think that is going to be something that's going to help your business and your marriage succeed and be much more fruitful.
And this is where that Genesis 2:24, that the entire name of our business is based upon, is that one flesh marriage means that you are one, you are together. And in previous episodes, we've talked about the leaving, cleaving, and weaving that Genesis 2:24 talks about. and you are together. It's like, we gave the analogy before of the two pieces of plywood that are glued together. You try to start pulling those apart, and there's going to be splinters and all kinds of bad things happen there. And both pieces of board are going to be weaker than the way were
and
before.
damaged.
Yeah. But whenever those two are glued together, those two boards are stronger than the two of them individually.
Yeah.
Or, even if you combine the two boards, the two of them glued together are stronger. And so I like how you said that, though. It could be that, like, okay, there's option A and option B, and maybe you say, let's do A first, and then we'll do B, in 3 years, in 5 years, whatever.
Right.
Or it could be option C.
Yeah.
Right. But whatever you're doing, you need to be doing that with both parties on board. So I like how you made that point. And this is, by the way, I don't know about some of the other ones, but this is one that ChatGPT definitely agreed with us.
Yes.
This is one of them that they that it came up with, that we talked about in the last episode, about being on the same page together.
Absolutely.
So
now, number 4 is not something that ChatGPT came up with, and it's multiple streams of income are a must.
Yeah, for sure. So, there used to be a day where people would just maybe even straight from high school, get a job and work there for 30, 40, 50 years and then retire. And that can still happen. It does still happen on occasion, but it's much, much more rare. And so that whole, quote unquote security that people used to really go for is just not really there anymore. So I'd say, even if somebody's got a full-time job, having some sort of a extra stream of income just makes sense. And that can be big or small. It can be something that becomes full-time eventually, or it could just be a kind of a side hustle where you make some extra money, but it's adds a little bit of security to your life. And just from our example, our entrepreneurial journey, we've been in the e-commerce space for 12 years full-time. And anybody who's in the e-commerce space, things just change rapidly. You get on these big platforms where all the customers are coming. And so it makes sense to sell there as a third-party seller, but they change the rules. They leave the rules, but change their interpretation of their own rules. And sometimes there's circumstances even outside of the platform's control, like inflation these last few years, things like that. It's just, so with the lack of security and the lack of really knowing for sure on some of these things, it just is a must for you to have some sort of multiple income stream thing going on. And then again, that could be, ideally, you've got, 5 things that are each bringing in 20% of your income. That would be beautiful, right?
Well, it sounds logical.
It sounds logical, but I don't know. It doesn't
usually happen that way.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody who's ever been able to accomplish that. But anyway, so multiple streams is really, really crucial. All right. So rule number 3 that we have learned is to always over prepare.
Absolutely. You never know what's going to happen, and preparing for multiple possibilities, preparing more than you think you're going to need to prepare for. You'll never, I don't think you'll ever regret being over prepared. We've talked before about when we were getting ready to have Larry come home from the job, I prepared the house. I prepared, I bought ahead on paper products and non-perishable goods. Some of it I went a little overboard on, but that was okay. It worked out okay. And we didn't want for anything that we needed in that transition time because of that preparation that I had done. We have over prepared in when we go on stage, we practice and rehearse together, and we write out notes. You found the first thing that we ever did together, that eBay training that we did.
Oh my goodness!
You found like you had printed out every slide, so you had a paper copy of it, and
that was maybe overkill, over prepared.
Well, it was over preparing, but it didn't hurt anything, and you felt more secure with that.
I did,
and now you don't need to do that anymore. And so I think that was, but being over prepared so that you can give your best effort and give, whether it's in the way of the training that you have taken to do what it is you want to do, or it is in preparing your own home financially, physically, for a big change that you're about to make, a pivot that you're about to make, whatever it is, when you over prepare, you're not going to regret it. And I can't think of a way that you could over prepare that would actually do harm to you in the way that you want to do. You don't want to procrastinate. That's a different thing, but over preparing is not a bad thing. And then rule number 2 is to work on your mindset.
Oh,
Big
man.
one.
Yeah, that is a big one. And again, this is something that we've learned the hard way because I can't remember when we really started hearing about mindset issues. It's been at least 10 years ago, if not longer. And I didn't really realize that I had a bad mindset, right? I mean, a really good upbringing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so many, I think that's another thing that happens a lot of times in kind of the common phrases that are out there. I think a lot of times people want you to go back into your childhood, and I know that you were abused somehow, some way. You've got to find it. You've got to find it. Keep looking for it. And I'm like, no, that didn't happen to me. I praise the Lord that didn't happen. I know a lot of people have had to overcome that, and that has been a mindset challenge for them. But in our situation, it's just been the fact that we have always just kind of our goal has been to make enough so that we can barely scrape by.
Yes. And I will say, I didn't call it mindset, but when you first came home and we first started working on our own, and we recognized, okay, everything that we do is going to affect our income one way or another. Yes. And my question that I kept asking, and it took me a long time to answer it, was, how do we do this correctly without beginning to chase the almighty dollar? That was my question.
Yes.
And so I knew that could become a problem. And I was wanting to know, how do we avoid doing that? And it took a long time for me to answer that question for myself. And honestly, that's a struggle that I can slip back into really easily. And so working on the mindset has been key for me, for sure.
I think just probably one of the best examples that we've experienced, and I'm kind of telling a story on you here, but there was a time where we were part of this e-commerce community. We were at a conference, and the guy who heads up the coaching program came up to us, and he was talking to us, and he said, I want you two to be coaches in our program. And he kind of went on and on about, like, he had seen stuff we had posted, answers we had given online. He really liked all of it. He wanted us to be coaches. And we're like, wow, this is just overwhelming. Yeah, we'd love to do that. And whenever we walked away from that conversation, you said,
I don't think we are who he thinks we are.
So you really thought he had us confused with somebody else.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, maybe you're right. I was all pumped up, and then I was thinking, oh no.
Yeah.
He's going to say, yeah, Joe and Martha, we're really excited about our new coaches. We're like, that's not us. But come to find out, he did have the right people.
Yeah.
We did join as coaches. We ended up leading a team of coaches and coach hundreds, and if not thousands, of students very successfully, and really enjoyed that. So that just speaks to the mindset that we had, though, at that stage. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can overcome that. I think the number one thing is to think of who you are in Christ, because that is, as a child of God, that is the most rewarding and prominent position we can ever have. And if you think of yourself that way, it kind of makes everything else, fade off in importance. So,
yeah.
All right. Got to do the drum roll here.
Drum roll.
All right. So rule number 1 is to be an overcomer.
Yes, absolutely. There is, as you have maybe already discovered, or you will discover as you move into entrepreneurship, there are obstacles everywhere. It can come from words from family and friends. It can be challenges that you experience in just the business model that you choose. It can be enemies. It can be competitors. It can be rules and rule changes, mindset, like we just talked about. It can be all kinds of things that you run into. Obstacles are everywhere. And one of the communities that we've been in for a long time, the leader of that community calls the people in there warriors who are entrepreneurs, because we really are. We have to fight hard to overcome many things. Some of the things we've talked about today and some we've talked about in the past. So there are a lot of things that we need to overcome. But there's a scripture that you love to share about
I really
that.
do, yeah. And it's from an Old Testament book that I don't think we talk about or think about it nearly as much as what we should. It's from the book of Habakkuk. And these verses are from chapter 3, verses 17 and 18, if you want to look them up. And he says this is Habakkuk speaking. He says, and I should just set up a little bit, because he is asking God, why are these evil nations, why are they flourishing, and why are your people not flourishing? Why are your people struggling so much and everything? So kind of talks to something I mentioned earlier a little bit, but he says here, though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Savior. So I think that's a great encouragement as we're like, there's one more quote we want to give here, but just as you think about being an overcomer, as you think about just dealing with the challenges and struggles of life, it's like all that other stuff, even if things get down to really the worst of what you could ever imagine there would be, God is still God. And as I said earlier, you're still a child of God and you can still depend upon him.
Absolutely. And if you ever fear stepping up to the plate, so to speak, and stepping out and taking a chance, I would love for you to find this quote, print it out, put it on your wall. You'll be able to find it. Do some, just do a Google search. This is something that Teddy Roosevelt said in 1910. He was in Paris in 1910. And this is the man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. Something to keep in mind. But who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with the cold, timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. So we want to encourage you to stay in the arena, be a warrior, and keep pushing forward.
Don't be that cold, timid soul.
No, not at all.
That's right. So I hope you have found this episode encouraging, and maybe you learned a few things from the tips that we gave, the lessons we've learned, the rules we have learned, whatever. And then once you've listened to the last episode and then this one, then you can compare us to ChatGPT.
Give us a grade.
And if we got an A from you, then maybe give us 5-star review here on the platform that you're watching or listening to, and that would help us out as well. So,
absolutely.
All right, anything else you want to add here?
I think we've said it all.
All right, very good. Well, we hope that you all have enjoyed this and that you'll continue to live as one flesh today,
tomorrow,
forever. Take care.
See ya.